This is your daily dose of all things royal.
Harry and Meghan, once the darlings of the nation, heralding an exciting new era for the royal family.
It did seem like a marriage made in heaven. It seemed like a truly glamorous transatlantic fairy tale.
Now, one of the most divisive couples in the world. So what happened?
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex say they intend to step back as senior members of the royal family.
Some believe that what they say and what they do are two very different things.
Harry, almost all of his life, he was the Prince of Privacy, but at some point he just performed this about-face and decided that actually he was going to be the Prince of telling it all.
Today, they continue to stoke the fires of controversy.
I think it's easy to see why people think it is hypocritical.
You're saying this and then you're doing something else.
I think Meghan and Harry like to dip their toes in controversial issues and then run for the hills.
It's very simple. If you're going to campaign against climate change, don't take private jets.
But are Harry and Meghan victims of a hostile press?
There are some newspapers which continue to be obsessed with them. And you look at them and think, why are you still doing this?
Or are they in fact royal hypocrites?
They don't help themselves, do they? They make these big statements and then they go back on it. So as the public, you're saying, well, you're saying this and then you're doing something else.
Harry and Meghan now live in Montecito, 100 miles north of Los Angeles, with their two children, Archie and Lilibet.
Archie took his very first steps right here. Right here.
They're no longer working royals and are effectively living in exile from the royal family. In order to work out whether Harry and Meghan really are royal hypocrites, we've got to go all the way back to the very beginning. Early on, the couple's relationship created a huge buzz of excitement.
When Harry and Meghan got together, this felt like a new departure for the royal family.
The first time I saw Meghan Markle with Prince Harry was in Nottingham on a very cold December morning. And Meghan was really welcomed with open arms. She did a walkabout alongside Prince Harry, accepting gifts, accepting flowers. And there was a real sense of excitement.
They seemed so in love. Actually, something we haven't really seen before with a royal couple. They were so touchy-feely in public. You'd look at them and you'd think, wow, this couple are really into each other.
Oh, she looked beautiful.
Yeah. She looks amazing, didn't she? She looked lovely.
I just said to him, your mum would be so happy for you. It's made me cry.
It was really exciting for people like us in the media because she was such a modern breath of fresh air for the royal family. She was a Hollywood glossy celebrity, beautiful, fabulous hair and makeup and teeth and clothes already. So yeah, she was completely different. She broke the royal mold.
Really very awkward at first, like, oh God, do we kiss? And I just remember he handed me a chicken sandwich.
So with this changing dialogue in society of greatness, awareness of diversity, how did the royal family fit into that? Along comes Meghan into that mix. There was a huge amount of hope, huge amount of positive dialogue of what the shared royal family could be for the future.
Before the wedding, when she got involved with the community kitchen near the site of the Grenfell fire, Meghan then had the idea of suggesting to these women who run the kitchen of publishing a cookbook, which was a fantastic success. That showed Meghan's initiative, her ideas, her energy, her fresh approach.
There was this real idea that Meghan, as a woman of colour, was going to come into the monarchy, she's going to sweep away the cobwebs and she was going to make everything better, and, you know, this whole legacy of colonialism, which is connected to monarchy for progressives in Britain, would be kind of resolved and it would just go away.
We were all so excited. She was completely different. She broke the royal mold.
This is the royal family getting with the programme, if you like. I'm mixed race myself, so when I saw Meghan, I thought, this is really exciting. She's mixed race, she stands for people like me.
We already had William and Catherine married, very, very popular. And then you add in to the mix Harry and Meghan, and of course they started being promoted as a foursome.
The Fab Four, such a brilliant setup. You have the two brothers and then the two sister-in-laws. And you just thought the chemistry, this is going to fly. Everyone felt that excitement. The public felt it. That was reflected in the press. She was 10 out of 10. For me, she could have done no wrong.
And then obviously it all went wrong.
Many of the accusations of hypocrisy seem to stem from Harry and Meghan's troubled relationship with the press.
Harry and Meghan were very, very sensitive to any criticism, and particularly, of course, to any hint of racism in the coverage that Meghan was getting. And he was not backward in coming forward with those criticisms of the press. And that was very different to what had been done before. The palaces handled the press very differently. If there was something they didn't like, they didn't draw attention to it by overtly criticising and making public statements. But Harry didn't want to do it that way. He wanted to do it his own way.
There was toxic stuff being printed about Meghan that created a massive argument and prompted Harry to release through his press secretary this incredibly dramatic statement calling out the racist undertones of comment pieces.
Britain's Prince Harry's household has issued an unusually strongly worded statement attacking the British tabloid press for their treatment of his latest girlfriend, Meghan Markle.
Harry's statement raised the stakes and made the serious allegation of racism against the British press.
I think when you compare the headlines, you've got Catherine and you've got Meghan, there's no doubt about it that there were racial overtones when it came to Meghan. They were both doing exactly the same things, yet somehow they'd always find fault with Meghan.
The worst, in my view, was a terrible, terrible piece in Mail Online saying Harry's girl is straight out of Compton. It's a smear as though she comes from gangland territory, and was completely untrue.
I think it's very clear to see there's headlines that have a racial slur to them or have an angle that, if you compared that to Harry's previous girlfriends, never existed.
I do not think it's fair that there was a racial undertone to commentary about Meghan. If anything, I think sometimes she's invited that kind of commentary.
Harry has accused the British press of having a racial undertone since day one, and I don't think it's fair. I never even thought about racism.
I think there's always a conversation there about how much of that is racism and how much of it is classism, how much of it is the British press just being mean. And I think probably all of those things exist and all of those things are true, and not one of them is the single universal factor.
Harry and Meghan's relationship with the press was fraught from the start, as they sought to maintain control over their private lives. But it would emerge as a constant theme in the allegations of double standards in the years to come.
Never underestimate what it must feel like to be the eye of that media storm. Every single day, day in, day out. And not only from tabloid press, where it's your photo and these headlines and, you know, all the things that go around that, but also just sort of online commentary. It is non-stop, 24/7.
Harry was always looking for the media and the press to revolt him, to disgust him, and the closer he looked, the more confirmation of his own bias, I think you could say, he did get. At the hands of the press, to pretty much any other young royal, I personally don't feel it was much different.
But it was Harry and Meghan's wedding in 2018 that opened them up to the first charge of inconsistency.
We know that in 2014, at the time of William and Catherine's wedding, that Meghan was writing in her blog and seemed to think that all the fuss and palaver about the royal wedding happening in the UK was over the top. Harry and Meghan seemed to say that they wanted something a bit smaller and more intimate on their wedding day. And her wedding was a monster of a royal wedding. Millions of people watching, everybody getting caught up in the almost hysteria.
There were people at the wedding that they didn't know. These were just celebrities that they invited to their wedding, and the celebrities couldn't resist saying yes because it's a royal wedding. I think they didn't know the Clooneys.
I think a lot of people questioned why it appears that the only member of Meghan's family was her mother, Doria, within St George's Chapel. Lots of celebrity friends, but in terms of close family, or indeed friends, there weren't many there.
What they say and what they want us to believe don't always seem to be the same thing.
I think personally it was hypocritical, because if Harry really wanted a smaller wedding, he could have got married at Althorp. That's the Spencer home, and I thought they would get married there.
I don't know what world they're living in to think that they could have ever had a small wedding. Come on, it is Prince Harry. We've been working out who he's going to marry for the past 25 years, the poor boy. Like, of course it's going to be a big wedding, and this is pretty much like the role of the royal family. They need to give us these wonderful standout moments that showcase the UK, that establish them as royalty. Boy, wasn't it all that.
The idea that Harry and Meghan might say one thing and do another had been seeded. A year after the wedding, Harry launched a new global travel company called Travelist. The aim, to focus on sustainable travel options.
For Prince Harry, there was a point when, the environment was a huge subject that he was campaigning on.
As we sit here today, our world is on fire. Again.
And I think the most troubling part of it is that I don't believe that there's anybody in this world that can deny science.
Together, I believe we can make a lasting difference.
He has this organization, Travelist, and the whole point of Travelist is to create the system where you can choose as a consumer to pick the environmentally friendly option when you fly.
Sometimes when we appreciate the world's beauty, we heighten its fragility. It's a paradox. But in our enthusiasm, we can put great strain on the natural wonders we travel to see.
Harry's eco-credentials were soon in the spotlight.
Of course, the more Harry talks about green matters, the more people start to take notice of the type of transport he's taking.
The first time they took a private jet as a married couple, the press picked up on it, slammed him for being a hypocrite. Now, at that point, you quickly pivot your strategy. I'd have a conversation and say, oh dear, darling, let's not take a private jet again. At least not while we're launching Travelist, an eco-travel company. Their belligerence, I think, is what gets them in so much trouble, because it's just the easiest and most obvious PR win in the world.
Some people say it's for their security, and then you see a very obvious comparison where you'll see William and Catherine getting on an EasyJet flight.
I've been on a commercial jet with Harry. He seemed perfectly safe at the time.
It's all about being self-aware, and I'm not always sure they hit the nail on the head with that.
But Harry and Meghan are not the only high-profile celebrities guilty of contradicting the green values they're promoting.
The trouble is, when people are really keen on climate change, they all look hypocritical. You look at Leonardo DiCaprio, who is a big supporter of climate change, and then he takes private jets.
I think you get into quite murky waters quite quickly when you start to scrutinise individual actions and look at it compared to the really big causes that they're standing for. Bill Gates, he gets private jets, but he still does enormous good in the world. I think if there's any opportunity to nitpick or to highlight any hypocrisy, then the tabloids are on it straight away. There is a whole industry that makes money out of hating on Harry and Meghan.
Coming up,
my jaw hit the floor.
Harry and Meghan make one of the biggest decisions of their lives and decide to step back from their roles as working royals.
There really was no other option.
Harry and Meghan now live in California. Their relationship with the royal family is in tatters, and public opinion is divided.
I think, unfortunately, everything that Harry and Meghan have done sort of smacks of hypocrisy and therefore is rather distasteful.
But in 2019, the cracks between the newlyweds and the rest of the royal family were only just starting to show.
The royal family is an institution. It is governed by duty. It is governed by arcane rules. And in comes two people who want to breathe life into it and modernise it and reflect the values of a modern society. And they didn't understand the rules.
In 2019, Harry and Meghan's son Archie was born. 6 months later, they went on a tour of South Africa, and it became clear they wanted to do things their own way.
The Tom Bradby documentary was a big turning point. Tom Bradby was able to elicit a response from Harry and from Meghan that no one else had done before. Both of them clearly upset, feeling vulnerable, feeling angry, and feeling quite isolated.
She's biting her lip, she's looking up at him, looking very vulnerable, and saying, thank you for asking if I'm okay, because I'm not okay.
Not many people have asked if I'm okay, but it's a very real thing to be going through behind the scenes.
And the answer is, would it be fair to say not really okay? It's really been a struggle.
Yes.
Some of the press and some within royal circles were very disapproving of the fact that Harry and Meghan had decided to speak personally about themselves rather than to speak about the issues that they were supposed to be drawing attention to.
I remember my jaw hit the floor because this is so unlike what you'd expect from a royal family member.
Harry and Meghan disregarded the royal family's mantra, never complain, never explain.
Other members of the family will always respond, you know, I'm absolutely fine, thank you very much, never been better, no matter what was going on in private.
I don't feel like she's letting it all out. She's pretty composed in that moment. You can see her thinking about her responses. You can see her trying to keep her face in order and not to sort of, you know, crumple on camera. They did a huge amount promoting other causes, making speeches, visiting different areas, promoting different charities. But that doesn't make as much noise as it does when she's saying, oh, I am really struggling at the moment.
But that wasn't the only issue critics had with the documentary. The intimate nature of what they were divulging in their interviews seemed at odds with the privacy they'd been calling for from the press.
It's very difficult not to smell hypocrisy when you look at Harry and Meghan's tour as they promote themselves and promote their own stories whilst asking for privacy.
I think there is a perception that Harry has wanted to have his cake and eat it. I've never found it hypocritical that they say they want privacy and they also then release some information about themselves. I think we all do that, admittedly on much more levels. Just because I post a picture on Instagram doesn't mean I want you to come to my house. You know, just because I write an article about a breakup doesn't mean I want you to go and find the guy I was dating and ask him about me.
In early 2020, Harry and Meghan announced they'd decided to leave their positions as working royals. Their plan was to move to America and establish financial independence.
The bond, which was once so close, has, in every formal royal sense, been shattered.
I've accepted this, knowing that it doesn't change who I am or how committed I am. But I hope that helps you understand what it had come to, that I would step my family back from all I have ever known, to take a step forward into what I hope can be a more peaceful life.
I actually think it was the right decision to quit. I think that Harry was not happy in the monarchy. I think Meghan did not get on as a royal and probably was never really going to, because she was always looking to the future and the monarchy is a relic of the past.
After Harry and Meghan stepped back, they agreed not to use the word royal. But they decided to keep their Duke and Duchess titles, which proved a wise decision.
Harry and Meghan decided to step back from the royal family. They said that they didn't want to be part of the inner circle anymore.
But then once you're out of the monarchy, it's like, well, actually, keeping the title is a hugely important part of being able to market yourself as a unique product in the private sector in Hollywood, because nobody else is a prince or a duke or a duchess. So I think there was an about turn.
They have reportedly changed their children's surname to Sussex to match their own titles.
And they use the Sussex title as a surname rather than what they previously claimed in 2019 when Prince Archie was born, that he would have the surname Mountbatten-Windsor. So why are you using your granted royal status as a surname if you are so opposed to having anything to do with the royal family?
They don't help themselves, do they? Because they make these big statements, clearly in a moment of anger, clearly in a moment of feeling like they want to rip it all up, and then they go back on it. So as the public, you're saying, well, you're saying this and then you're doing something else.
Soon after the titles controversy, Palace insiders leaked a story about unhappiness within the ranks of Harry and Meghan's staff.
So when Meghan first came onto the scene, it was all about her being this kind of social justice era icon. She was going out and doing charity work, and she was turning stereotypes on their head. But obviously, part of the social justice worldview is that you have to be nice to people. And Meghan was accused of bullying two PAs out of Kensington Palace.
it sort of emerged that there was this group of people called the Sussex Survivor Squad, and they all believed that they suffered at the hands of Meghan and Harry. One girl said she was reduced to tears, that they had 5 a.m. emails, that they were hounded by this couple and their behaviour was abhorrent.
She was known as Duchess Difficult, and that really rankled with her.
When the allegation of bullying first surfaced, Meghan rejected it, saying this was the latest attack on her character.
I find all the reports around Meghan's bullying very confusing, because the Meghan I see when I'm watching on interviews and seeing her interact with the public, that does not ring true at all to somebody who could be a bully. But there's a part of me that thinks there's no smoke without fire.
Some would say it's just an Americanism, just are more demanding, that she wasn't very royal in the way that she behaved with staff members. I suspect the truth lies somewhere in between.
These same allegations have now been made against Meghan in America, where staff within their American operation have described Meghan as, one person said a dictator in high heels, their words, not mine. That is the recurring allegation that exists in both contexts.
By the spring of 2021, Harry and Meghan were living in California with their children Archie and Lilibet, estranged from the rest of the royal family. They agreed to be interviewed by Oprah Winfrey, a broadcast that has now been seen by almost 50 million people.
So you left because you were asking for help and couldn't get it?
Yeah, basically.
It's been so spun in the wrong direction, so we quit, we walked away.
My biggest concern was history repeating itself.
I mean, the Oprah interview was a sort of nuclear bomb dropped on the forecourt of Buckingham Palace. It was absolutely extraordinary.
It was saying the unsayable. It was giving us an insight into a distorted relationship between father and son. It was as powerful as Diana's interview on the BBC. There was no holes barred.
The interview made an immediate impact.
The Oprah interview was littered with hand grenades throughout it.
Prince Harry accused his father, the then Prince Charles, now King, of financially cutting him off when he stopped being a working member of the royal family.
My family literally cut me off financially, and I had to afford security for us.
Wait, hold up, wait a minute. Your family cut you off?
Yeah.
Meghan claimed and Harry claimed that she was offered no help with her mental health struggles.
But to receive no help at all and to be told continuously, this is how it is, this is just how it is, we've all been through it.
It gave Harry and Meghan a high-profile opportunity to tell their side of the story.
I think that's exactly why they did the Oprah interview for a start. Why shouldn't they have their say?
One of the claims Meghan made in the interview centered around how much knowledge she had about the royals before she met Harry.
What did you think it was going to be like?
I will say I went into it naively, because I didn't grow up knowing much about the royal family.
How much Meghan knew about being a part of the royal family has been highly debated for years.
And Meghan knew exactly what she was doing. There's even photographs of her sitting outside Buckingham Palace on a tourist trip to London. Of course she knew about Harry. She was a Princess Diana fan.
It's perfectly normal for anyone, when they are a tourist in London, they would go to Buckingham Palace. It doesn't mean that you're obsessed with the royals.
There have been claims that she was looking for her prince, but not necessarily a real-life prince, perhaps just somebody who was British, who had status, who had money.
She blogged about the royal family, about Kate's wedding. She must have Googled Harry. Sometimes she says she hasn't, but there are other times where she's admitted she has.
She obviously didn't have zero knowledge of him when she was friends with his cousin. She was friends with Princess Eugenie before she ever met him. And this is one of the things that's so frustrating about Harry and Meghan, is even when they do have a legitimate point to make, they will often pluck some absurd and weird example out of thin air that is implausible.
Meghan's knowledge of the royal family was probably quite limited. She knew as much as all of us do, but I don't think she was quite prepared for what was in front of her.
Meghan also spoke about how unprepared she was for the royal family's customs and traditions.
Harry and I are in the car, and he says, okay, well, my grandmother's there, so you're gonna meet her. Oh, great. I loved my grandmother. I used to take care of my grandmother. This is great. He goes, right, do you know how to curtsy?
She famously said that she didn't know how to curtsy for the Queen and that Fergie had to give her a quick 30-second briefing.
He said, do you know how to curtsy? Now, I thought genuinely that was what happens outside.
Yeah.
I thought that was part of the fanfare. I didn't think that's what happens inside. And I said, but it's your grandmother. He goes, it's the Queen.
Personally, I don't find that those two stories are particularly at odds with each other. I think you can have an understanding of the royal family. You can have thought that Princess Diana was fantastic and glamorous and exciting when you're young, but not understand that curtsying behind closed doors is a thing. I think many people would think the royals would be much more informal away from the public than they would be in front of the public.
Meghan didn't actually try and understand it. That's the difference. She didn't try or seem to want to understand it.
The most controversial claim was that Meghan had faced racism from within the royal family.
Meghan made this very high-profile allegation of racism in the royal family. You know, she said an unnamed royal family member had commented on how dark her unborn child's skin might be and expressed concern about it.
There is a conversation with you...
With Harry.
About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. And you're not going to tell me who had the conversation?
I think that would be very damaging to them.
This is the most sensational thing you could imagine coming out of an interview. The very fact the interview was taking place at all was unbelievably shocking. And then to make a claim like that, it was next level.
And when you just sort of put it out there, but you don't specify who it was or exactly how it happened, a media storm will be created around that. The repercussions, the ripples that are going to be felt by the entire royal family and the UK is going to be huge.
Another media storm followed in the summer of 2021, when Harry and Meghan decided to name their daughter Lilibet, the childhood name of her great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth.
They say they don't even want their royal status, but they still have called their daughter Lilibet after the Queen.
Harry likes to give the impression they asked the Queen. And I know for a fact that afterwards, the Queen went around telling people in private, well, they never asked me.
I would name my kid after my grandma, and she's not any old lady, she's Queen Elizabeth, you know, and what a lady she was.
By 2021, Harry and Meghan were living on the west coast of America and trying to establish their financial independence. The accusations of double standards were about to get much worse.
They made that move to California, and they need to make a vast amount of money.
One of their biggest expenses was their security, and a fight developed about who should pick up the substantial bill.
When Prince Harry and Meghan stepped back from being senior royals, they lost their top-level security protection. Now Prince Harry's legal team is challenging that decision.
As a senior member of the royal family, you are entitled to 24/7 taxpayer-funded police protection. When Harry stood back as a working member of the royal family, he and Meghan's security status was downgraded. Harry felt that was unfair, because although he is no longer a working member, from Harry's perspective, they still have targets on their backs.
In the autumn of 2021, Harry began legal action against the government, arguing that he shouldn't have to pay for his own security.
I think what he wants is the super security, which is when you have the outriders and they stop the traffic and the car whizzes through. He doesn't want to sit in the back of a car with a police protection officer in the front. He wants the whole works.
You can hardly blame him for wanting to be looked after properly.
He says it's just not enough for the level of protection needed when he returns home. Security experts in the UK unsympathetic.
I can understand why Harry's upset. You've got the likes of Theresa May, our former Prime Minister. She's got lifelong protection. Why can't Harry and Meghan have that too?
How to cover the cost of their expensive lifestyle has been at the heart of Harry and Meghan's struggles since they left the royal family.
Practically the first thing they did was starting to look at ways of making money by giving interviews. And I think that's incredibly hypocritical, having said you want a private life. They don't want a private life. That is the biggest joke of all time.
His job is being royal, and he's qualified for very little else apart from being in the army, which he's very talented at. But, you know, he bought a very expensive house. He's got to pay for it somehow. It's tricky, really, for him. I just don't see how he's going to make money unless he flogs his royal title.
In North America, there was a cachet of being next in line to the throne, this celebrity royal couple.
They need to be pulling in millions and millions of pounds a year in order to support that themselves. And they have no means of doing that other than relying on the royal brand. So you might find it distasteful, but I don't think anybody has a better suggestion of what they could do.
So what were these financial deals, and why were they so controversial?
One of the biggest things that happened when they first moved to America was the Netflix deal.
Why did you want to make this documentary?
When the stakes are this high, doesn't it make more sense to hear our story from us?
It was massive, it was going to set them up with a multi-year deal, so it was going to give them a certain financial future. Then they negotiated Spotify. That seemed incredibly positive at the point that they landed that deal.
Should we start? No? Ladies first?
No, say it, because I think it sounds really nice with your accent. Shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. Hi guys, I'm Harry.
And I'm Meghan.
Yes, they have made a lot of money, but the successful projects they've had have been the ones that have lifted the lid on private matters within the royal family.
It's really nice to just be able to have the opportunity to let people have a bit more of a glimpse into what's happened and also who we are.
Harry's put his own secrets into the public domain, and when he's launching some quite sometimes personal and searing criticisms of his own family and making money off it, that is the point at which it becomes hypocrisy, because that is the very thing that the tabloid press were doing to Harry his whole life, that destroyed him psychologically his whole life.
So they find themselves in a difficult position where even if they don't want to hang out the dirty linen of the royal family, that is the way that they are going to make money.
In the Netflix documentary, Harry claims in that the royal family or their courtiers were willing to lie and paint Harry and Meghan in a bad light in order to protect their own principles. Harry also claims that the royal household lied to protect his brother, Prince William.
They were happy to lie to protect my brother. They were never willing to tell the truth to protect us.
They were revealing quite a lot in that documentary series, weren't they? It was basically reality TV, but my goodness, what great reality TV. We can look around their home, we can see their family dynamics play out, we can see them kissing in the kitchen, you know. This is brilliant television, and this is what we're hungry for. So, yes, it is revealing a lot, but hey, we lap it up, don't we?
Although people are allowed to disclose what they want in public and still keep other parts of their lives private, critics felt the intimacy on camera was at odds with their requests to respect their privacy.
Many people thinking, well, if it smells hypocritical and looks hypocritical, it is hypocrisy. Many people thought that, and it's difficult to disagree.
And just as the press and public thought they'd heard everything, Harry released a tell-all memoir, Spare.
Probably the biggest success that they've had was Harry's book, Spare, which was a huge publishing phenomenon. It sold 1.4 million copies in the first day. It was the fastest-selling non-fiction book, I think, of all time. It was extremely controversial in many parts.
I was just gobsmacked that he just didn't take it to level 1, he took it to level 10 out of 10. But he could have done what a lot of celebrities do, which is give a sort of glossy, stylized version of their life where they invade their privacy a little bit, but they keep a lot back.
Look, if you're paid, I don't know, 100 million, no publisher wants a sort of, you know, a soft book. They want headlines.
But critics argue that Spare was another example of double standards, given Harry's stance on other members of his family telling their stories.
Harry has said in his defence, well, it's fine for me to do all these interviews, fine for me to write this book, because palace sources are telling the tabloids about my wife and my life, and they're saying all of these things, so why don't I get the chance to tell my side of the story? But I think, of course, Harry wouldn't like it if William did that. He wouldn't tolerate other people behaving the same way he does, but this gives rise to a hypocrisy in a lot of the things that he says and does.
And it wasn't just the tell-all nature of the book that sparked controversy.
I actually broke one of the exclusives for the inaccuracies in Spare. So Prince Harry claims within his book that he was at school when his great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, passed away. Now, I know from photographic evidence, news reports at the time, and from speaking to someone who was with him at the time, that he was actually skiing with his father and brother in Switzerland. So that may seem like a very pedantic point, but what it does do is question whether there are other more important inaccuracies within Prince Harry's memoir, Spare.
I think the problem with this couple is they perceive reality different to how other people do, frankly. But you've got other people involved, you know, such as members of the royal family, saying, no, that just isn't what happened, you know. Such as, for example, Meghan feeling that she wasn't supported by the royal family. But, you know, it is a fact that the Queen gave her best royal aide, Samantha Cohen, to Meghan. You know, you couldn't get better support than that.
Do you know when we could talk about contradictions? I think, you know, everybody went through Spare with a fine-tooth comb and found lots of contradictions. Did this really happen? Did it not? Who cares? It's a memoir.
For some, Harry and Meghan talking about the perceived injustice in their lives and asking for privacy is not as contradictory as others have argued.
For me, it's not surprising that they've done these tell-all interviews, because the one big thing that comes up time and time again with Harry and Meghan is that they want to tell their truth, tell the series of events how they see it happened, and them not having control of that narrative is something that clearly deeply, deeply affects them.
I just don't think they're the only celebrities in the world who don't mind telling their own stories, but on their terms. It's what happens all the time. And they're no better, no worse than anyone else when they do that.
Some commentators have argued that when it comes to revealing intimate details about their lives, they don't have a choice.
It's important to remember that it's the bear-all, tell-all elements of their work that sells well. The more sort of earnest or worthy elements, so Meghan talking to business leaders, Meghan doing archetypes, podcasts, these sorts of things haven't been massively successful because people aren't terribly interested in their opinions, they're more interested in their stories.
So is there a contradiction between railing against the tabloids and telling all on international television?
I think it really is exactly the same thing. It's just selling information about your family members.
If they don't want to be scrutinised and they want genuinely to be private people with private lives, then they can't go around making headlines. They can't go around making TV shows. They can't go around criticising members of the royal family. They can't have their cake and eat it.
It does feel a little bit contradictory at times, but I guess, you know, that they're human beings like us. They don't have to tell us everything. They don't have to share everything with us. And I guess they wanted to do it on their own terms.
The media world would be lost without the discourse around Meghan and Harry. What do you replace it with?
While the contents of Spare caused a media storm, Harry also used it as an opportunity to row back on the couple's earlier claims of racism in the royal family.
Prince Harry is asked about that claim within a promotional interview for his memoir Spare. And Prince Harry cuts off the interviewer and says, Meghan wasn't accusing that member of the royal family of racism.
In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even...
Well, the British press said that.
Right.
Did Meghan ever mention that they were racist?
She said there were troubling comments about
there was concern about his skin colour.
Right. Wouldn't you describe that as essentially racist?
I wouldn't, not having lived within that family.
It feels like it's being swept under the carpet because, you know, they don't talk about it anymore. Harry didn't put much about it in his book. They didn't get deeply into it in Netflix.
Now, when I heard that, I was confused. Because why would you let a narrative run that a member of your own family was racist, why wouldn't you set the record straight? And he didn't. He let that narrative run.
Thank you for sparing the time. Pleasure to see you as always.
Thanks for coming all this way.
In early 2023, Harry released his tell-all memoir, Spare, which sold well and made him a small fortune. But it also prompted a new wave of criticism.
I think people accuse Prince Harry of hypocrisy because on the one hand, he wants privacy, but Prince Harry has aired his dirty laundry in public for the entire world to see.
Harry, the interview.
Harry the Interview.
What
an original name.
The release of Spare prompted Harry to give a series of interviews to major news and TV outlets.
Harry has given countless interviews, and he's done at least a dozen, probably more. He's always the victim.
This is an good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up. I refer to it as heir spare, but also older brother, younger brother. And every single time I've tried to do it privately, there have been briefings and leakings and planting of stories against me and my wife.
The thing I think damaged Harry and Meghan almost more than anything else was having the mickey taken with the privacy tour. When they were the butt of jokes with a cartoon showing them as completely hypocritical, going on a tour to ask for privacy, but meanwhile bearing all on all sorts of late-night TV shows.
And now you've written all about it in your new book, Where?
I remember when he was in his 20s and 30s, he hated the press. Anyone he even suspected of talking to the press were cut off immediately. It's completely confusing to us in the media because they invade their own privacy the whole time.
They really, really struggled not having a voice when they were part of the royal family. They clearly felt really suffocated by all of that. So it's no wonder that they said, we want to be able to tell our truth the way that we've perceived it.
People will always be critical of someone who monetizes their private life at the expense of others. You know, Harry telling his story and betraying all those family confidences, that's always going to come under criticism.
Harry, almost all of his life, he was Mr. Privacy or the Prince of Privacy. But at some point, he just performed this about face and decided that actually he was going to be kind of, you know, the Prince of telling it all. And so he then started to do the exact thing that the tabloids have been doing to him his whole life, which was to put other people's private information in the public domain. And it is a hypocrisy, you know.
Some argue that Harry is not bound to secrecy when he's talking about his own experiences or mistreatment, while others claim that selling stories about their lives is the only way for Harry and Meghan to achieve financial independence.
It's like two still relatively young people trying to find their path, trying to make it up as they go.
They haven't left a trail of success in their wake since leaving the royal family.
When they try and do something that is not to do with their royal connections, so Meghan's attempt at making an animated series, which is going to be called Pearl, her children's book, those things which are not a direct response to having been royal, either do badly or get cancelled.
They negotiated Spotify. That seemed incredibly positive at the point that they landed that deal. In the end, they made one show, Archetypes, and then after that, it basically fell apart. Both sides walked away from it. Spotify firing this parting shot, calling them grifters.
But Travelist seems to have died a death, which is Harry's travel company. Then Centre Bali, his charity's gone terribly badly wrong.
I think without Meghan and Harry's royal associations, no one would be remotely interested in them.
As well as trying to define their approach to business, Harry's political outlook has also changed significantly, which has come in for criticism.
If you look at Harry throughout his life, he clearly has gone through a big change. If you compare young, bumptious Harry dressed in a Nazi uniform for a fancy dress party, if you compare the young officer in the army who was using racial slurs, that is a very, very different person to fully paid-up member of the wokerati that you see in front of you now.
So in Harry's 60 Minutes interview, he talks about the fact that he did change when he met Meghan and that he got a bit of criticism for that.
Hell, I was probably bigoted before the relationship with Meghan.
You think you were bigoted before the relationship with Meghan?
I don't know. Put it this way, I didn't see what I now see.
The trouble is that people who knew the old Harry, I think, don't particularly like the new Harry. They see the new Harry as being a reaction against the old Harry, and people think that's hypocritical. You used to be one of us, now you're part of the California woke liberal left, and you've left us behind and you're rude about us.
We all have things where we're embarrassed about in our past, and Harry has done that on a public stage his whole life. So yes, there are times where he's got it majorly wrong, but he's clearly learned from that, and we shouldn't be using that as evidence that he's a hypocrite. We should be celebrating that and saying, yes, this is something we should all aspire to do. If you get it wrong in the past, try and change it.
Listen, Harry made a mistake, didn't he, when he dressed up as a Nazi? He has apologised for that. And I guess let him move on. He may have made mistakes in the past, but he still has a voice. Why can't we hear it?
Meghan has also tried to broaden her business interests beyond the royal family. And in early 2025, she launched a new show on Netflix, which showcased her passion for cooking and gardening alongside a new commercial brand, As Ever.
Meghan's latest money-making venture is As Ever, which she promotes on her programme With Love Meghan, which is on Netflix. Netflix is opening shops all around America, and they've worked with Meghan to create a proper line of products such as pancake mix, her famous jams, her raspberry preserves, and I think that's going to go quite well.
Meghan's new business venture has caused surprise in some circles, as it seems to go against some of her earlier statements about feminism.
Well, Meghan's talked about her feminism more times than I can count.
I think it's timely right now, the conversation of feminism and women feeling empowered, but to plant those seeds starting really young.
She's spoken about it on her Archetypes podcast, she's spoken about it at the UN and in New Zealand.
You have to be so authentically the role model and the example of confidence.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am tremendously honored to be UN Women's advocate for political participation and leadership.
There was this story that she's told 1,000 times about Ivory Clear washing up liquid, that she got this advert changed because it had said women belonged in the kitchen, and so she was this force for a new era of bold, powerful feminist women.
The gloves are coming off. Women are fighting greasy pots and pans with Ivory Clear.
When we first saw the commercial, I knew something could be done because I was furious. And I said, wait a minute, how could somebody say that? I think I'll write a letter.
It feels like this is a core part of her brand. That's an anecdote she's told 100 times, if not 1,000.
You know, it said, women all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans. And the boy said, yeah, that's where women belong, in the kitchen. And at 11, I just found that infuriating and wrote lots of letters and put pen to paper, and they ended up changing the commercial.
There is something a little uncomfortable if you juxtapose the Meghan who was fighting the big corporations to be less sexist to new Meghan fronting a show which is all about it being very, very feminine and being the hostess with the mostess, and with some gushing about flower arranging and little tokens and making your house as homely as possible.
She's made it her whole brand to be kind of this domestic goddess, a mum. She makes balloon arches in the show. I'm a mum of 3. I've never made a balloon arch. You just got to ask, is this a feminist thing to do? It's not who Meghan has professed to be up until this point.
1 minute Meghan is a hardcore feminist, talking about modern values of women. Next time she's a 1950s home frau, cooking jam. It's that changing narrative.
Can you be an ultra-feminist homemaker wearing a pinafore? Well, it's a difficult trick to pull off.
For others, however, there's no contradiction.
Of course you can be both. Of course you can be interested in entertaining and hosting people and still be a feminist. Both things can be true, and I think it's actually really sort of anti-feminist to suggest that that isn't the case. She's a career woman. She's now successfully built up a brand. She has secured multi-million-dollar deals. Come on, you can't be saying she's just a trad wife. She is so much more than that.
It's not the first time that Meghan has been challenged about her feminist values.
One of the most memorable and slightly uncomfortable moments from The Meghan Markle television show on Netflix is where Mindy Kaling, who is a friend of Meghan Markle's, starts talking to her and she makes reference to, who knew that Meghan Markle does blah, blah, blah. And Meghan goes, why are you calling me Markle? I'm Sussex.
It's so funny, too, that you keep saying Meghan Markle. You know I'm Sussex now.
Comedian Mindy Kaling used Meghan's family name, but Meghan was quick to point out that she now uses her married name, Sussex.
We know that Meghan Markle talked about keeping her maiden name.
But just a few years ago, Meghan was defiant about not losing her maiden name.
I nearly lost my name. I mean, there's the loss of identity, but I'm still standing.
I have some sympathy. I think when you have children, actually you really want to have the same surname as them, really, no matter how much of a feminist you are. And I think that was the actually genuine struggle that Meghan was having with that issue. And it's a struggle I had as well, and many women have.
Some critics have pointed to another way in which Meghan has tried to project two contradictory versions of herself.
They couldn't be more A-list if they tried. Like, they are hanging out with the superstars, living the life over in California. They look perfect the whole time. They have this exquisite setup. It could not be more shiny, veneered lifestyle that they're showing. And then at the same time, they're trying to be at one with the people. That doesn't ring true.
Who can forget her engagement photo? She wore a ball gown and had a very stylized shoot. Whereas, you know, Catherine and William sort of stood there. She had a dress from a middle-of-the-range designer called Issa. Not exactly a luxury £20,000 ball gown. So you've got these two sides to Meghan. The Hollywood starlet who wants to be super famous and wear a tiara and have a huge wedding. But then she wants to be relatable and she's just a mum cooking at home for her children. And I think her biggest problem is authenticity. I don't know if she even knows. I think she was trying to flog both at the same time, and that's what drives people crazy about this couple.
I guess there's two worlds colliding there. There's her trying to be relatable mum of two, and then there's still the old ways of being part of the royal family, and they're trying to navigate that at the moment, and I think they don't always get it right.
She's a Hollywood actress in her own right. Of course they're going to have celebrity friends. They're not going to hide that. And I think you can have that duality.
Harry and Meghan really want to basically live Diana's legacy. They want to be seen as the heirs to Princess Diana. But Diana really understood something that they don't understand. You know, being humble, being relatable, it's not about going out and telling people that you're relatable.
Love them or hate them, Harry and Meghan divide opinion. But are they simply scrutinized more than the rest of us?
I think they do come in for too much scrutiny, possibly. You know, they cannot do anything without the world watching, but they also invite that by staging these crazy stunts. What you can't do is be front and centre of the world stage and then complain when you're faced with a lot of scrutiny.
In the spring of 2025, Meghan was interviewed by American makeup millionaire Jamie Kern-Lima for her podcast. Before her appearance, Meghan gave Kern-Lima a present with a gift card using HRH to describe herself, a title she'd been asked not to use following her departure from the royal family.
When Meghan recently was found to have used the HRH title in a note, again, it's this idea that she hates the royal family, she hates everything it stood for. It was rigid, it was hierarchical, it didn't allow her to be herself, and yet she can't resist using it, and she's been categorically told not to use that title.
If we believe her people who said, oops, it was just a mistake, well, that's pretty bad, because her people should know that that is a massive no-no.
I think that it's an own goal, definitely, and it isn't thought through, but again, it's about the advice. If you're determined to push forward your point, you're not going to listen to the people giving you the advice you don't want to hear.
It's a situation that a decent press officer would never have allowed. To me, it struck more of cock-up rather than conspiracy.
You can be born into the royal family or you can marry into it, but as Harry and Meghan have just found out, that doesn't mean you can keep the word royal if you leave.
Having slammed the royal family for years now, she really wants to use the title Sussex. And in fact, she wants to use the name Sussex Royal on her branding and was told she wasn't allowed to. So it feels a little bit hypocritical to then rely on that royal fame to sell products or maintain notoriety.
The couple's current use of the word royal is extensive. Their new website will have to be rebranded from sussexroyal.com. The use of a crown in their official logo may also need to be revised.
The Sussex title was bestowed on Harry on his marriage by the Queen. Then they abused this title, which was bestowed upon them by the monarch, for commercial reasons.
They are still the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Those titles were given to them, and those are the titles that they use. They have to earn money. We know that they have got an expensive security bill and big house to pay for over in California. So, you know, how do people expect them not to sort of be using that?
I don't think there's any genuine reason that they should be prohibited or discouraged from using their background or their status to make money. I think that's what any influencer, blogger, famous person, celebrity does. But a lot of them are much better at not showing the strings, and they hide the working so much more elegantly. Whereas with Meghan and Harry, you can feel the effort. And I think that's something that people respond to negatively with them across the board.
What is the authentic Meghan? What is the authentic Harry? It's the relationship with the royals. So they are in a difficult position of navigating their way through that, trying to make money in an area where the way you do it is, you know, to be a Kardashian, to tell us lots of things about your life. And yet they're royal, they're not supposed to do that, so they're going to get criticised.
Unfortunately, they have kind of painted themselves into a corner now where if there is no more acrimony with the royal family, there are no more stories, and the only thing that Harry and Meghan, unfortunately, can get any traction for is discomfort and discord and disharmony with the royal family.
The rancour with the royal family was in the spotlight once again in the early summer of 2025 when, after 4 years of legal wrangling, Harry finally lost his battle for enhanced security in the UK.
I've been treated very, very, very differently to everybody else that exists. All examples that exist, past, present, I have been singled out.
If we were living in the land of milk and honey, I would have absolutely no problem with Harry having police protection. But I think the difficult thing for me is that we do live in an era of limited public resource, unfortunately.
A load of people see as Harry's moaning again. Look, you want to be out of this institution, you're out. You can't be half in and out. There were elements within what he positioned which are very strong. The world is a very dangerous place at the moment, and he is a target. But if you're not buying into it, he's being perceived as spoilt and ungrateful, and you made your bed, get on the line, mate, we can't afford you. He's losing the battle.
In a raw interview after the court ruling, Harry talked about how much he wanted to reconcile with his family.
I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious.
You can't say you want a reconciliation with your family and then in the next breath criticise them.
Is it a win for them? Is it a win that, you know, that I don't get the protection?
It's hypocrisy and a complete lack of self-awareness and stupidity.
Family fallouts and family dramas, and this is a family drama on an epic scale, are always messy. There's never black and white. There's never somebody completely in the right, somebody completely in the wrong. And yes, he probably is a bit of a hypocrite, for sure, but it's played out on this world stage. But within that, there is a whole industry that makes money out of commenting and pointing out those differences and spinning those stories. So those hypocrisies get amplified 1,000 times.
Harry's publicly stated desire to have conversations with his family is not so much hypocritical as naively, wildly optimistic. Why on earth would they want to have a conversation with him?
The royal policy is to never explain, never complain. So the likelihood of us hearing anything specific from them is vanishingly unlikely.
He was painting himself as something of a victim, and yet actually, if you look at the evidence, the other members of the royal family will be feeling like victims. They were the ones that actually had the mud slung at them. So it's easy to see why people would think, hang on a minute, Harry, you're the one that's got blood on your hands in this relationship, and yet you're expecting them to be the ones to reach out to you. Why would they do that?
Since Harry and Meghan left their roles as working royals in 2020, they've been trying to define their place in the world.
Their brand strategy is pure chaos. So there's loads of sort of, let's throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. And of course, when it doesn't stick, it becomes a story, and that story then erodes their true purpose. And that's the unfortunate thing.
They are not sending a clear message of what they're trying to do or what they want to do.
When it comes to the press and their privacy, and then them sort of literally letting it all hang out when it comes to them telling their side of the story, it is really hypocritical. There's no getting around that.
Recently, Harry and Meghan have taken to using online platforms more often as part of their communication strategy.
One of the things that Harry and Meghan have done is social media, which is really unheard of for the royal family. They have their official social media account. Recently, Meghan has shared this video of her dancing with Harry just before Lily was born.
In 2025, 4 years after it was originally filmed, Harry and Meghan published a video online based on a TikTok dance craze.
She was about to give birth to Lilibet, but the baby wasn't coming. She said she tried spicy food, she tried walking, she tried everything. And she said to Harry, let's try dancing. So she did this twerking dance in the hospital room. And Harry obviously had his telephone recording it. And it's really, really undignified and really embarrassing.
Still doing moves like Beyonce. Yeah, I said I'm pregnant, get the child support and pay my rent, your opinion is irrelevant.
This is the most intimate thing I've ever seen from any royal ever. It's completely invading their own privacy. It's the birthing centre of their own private suite in a private hospital. So they've really muddied the waters by doing that. You would never see, for example, a video of William and Catherine in the birthing suite about to give birth.
I think it was absolutely disastrous and very stupid and, I have to say, very vulgar of her to do it.
By releasing videos like that, not only are they breaking their own privacy, but they're losing control of the narrative. It was too intimate to be shared if you've spent the last 5 years complaining about your privacy.
They want to say, hey, can you, respect our privacy? And the problem with that is that, it just doesn't fly with the public. You can't be complaining about this stuff and then going off and doing it yourself.
Look, again, she hasn't done anything wrong. This is who she is. And I think a lot of black women will identify with her. She's just dancing. She's just having a bit of fun. Why are people getting so angry about it?
So, are Harry and Meghan royal hypocrites?
I just think Harry and Meghan are the dictionary definition of hypocrites.
I think that they have exhibited some absolutely breathtaking examples of hypocrisy, which are rooted in, especially in Harry's case, an inability to actually grasp other people's emotions and perspectives. Harry can understand his worldview and he can understand Meghan's worldview, and that is it. He can't see the world through other people's eyes. He's just not capable of it.
They've made many mistakes. What's harder to work out is whether those mistakes have been genuine mistakes or whether they've been malicious. Of course, people can be hypocritical without intending to be hypocrites. Either way, it doesn't look good to be a hypocrite.
Humans are hypocritical. We're complicated, changeable beasts. So yes, of course they say stuff which then doesn't ring true to an action that they do however many years later. And if anybody had a microscope on their life as much as Harry and Meghan do, then I think we'd all be accused of being hypocrites.
They have been pitched as disruptors, these hypocrites, this wicked woman at the centre of this poor, deluded prince. They've got to change that narrative.
It's very easy to point fingers, just because they're doing things differently, but why do they have to be stifled by the royal institution all the time? This is their freedom. Why can't they do what they want? They're doing exactly what they want, but we're still having a go at them. And that really, to me, is quite sad.
It seems as if Harry and Meghan are going to spend a lot of time and energy firefighting allegations of hypocrisy for the foreseeable future.
Harry Harry and Meghan are in between a rock and a hard place. They actually can't do anything right. They have tried to reclaim their narrative and say, this is the truth. And we still say, no, that's not the truth. They have tried to leave the royal family, but we still say, no, you haven't really left the royal family. And the more that they sort of stamp their feet and try and change it, the more resistance that they're met with.
The one thing that's really important to understand about Prince Harry is that he wants to be able to do whatever he wants 100% of the time. So he doesn't have a problem with any of these hypocrisies because he's not looking at the big picture of everything he's ever said and everything he's ever going to say. He's just expressing what he feels in the moment.
I think we're all hypocrites. I think Harry and Meghan are probably bang in the middle of the scale of hypocrisy. I think they are worse than some people, better than others, but everything they do is a matter of public record. And so I'm not sure that they're much more hypocritical than your average person, but they are much, much more documented.
I don't think that Harry and Meghan will be able to shake the accusation of hypocrisy. There have been too many examples where they have belittled their own arguments or they've seemed to face two ways. And in the public and the press's mind, they just are hypocrites. And I think it's going to be very hard, if not impossible, to unstick that reputation.
Such a fraud.